Greetings and welcome. My name is Jake Rayson. I am a wildlife forest garden designer and haven't been doing live streams for quite a while now. We kind of dropped off the off the map a bit. We've just been moving house, so yeah, all a bit chaotic, and there was lots of stuff behind the scenes going on. This is a quick introduction to the Tir Garden project. This is a project down in South Wales. 2-acre forest garden, and I kind of wanted to this is for the client really, just to kind of explain the design so far. So I've done a site report, I've written it up, and the kind of key things to consider. So this is quite a little bit technical, but it's kind of aimed for the clients, but it might be interesting to other people as well. So let's get the let's get everything sorted out. Hopefully this was flickering earlier on. So first of all, then, the notes are all online, and they're on grwd.uk/TIR, and this is what I do for each of my clients. I have online notes for them so that they can reference them later at any stage. And there's also all the plans that I do are in a PDF format, and they can also download the latest the CAD files if they want to. They can have access to the CAD files. So it's all open source and it's all theirs. So this is where all the notes are being kept, and I've just been doing an overview really. So it's a report. It's the initial report. So this is the kind of the key thing, and a kind of summary of it. And I'll walk through the design and all the different parts of it. Oh, it's starting to flicker a little bit. Let me just get rid of that. There we go. And then so yeah, so I'm just going to go and walk through the different parts. It's kind of for each client as well. I collect like the images that I'm using. Well, that's not good. It's kind of flickering badly. Showing my desktop. Very odd. That's never ever done that before. How am I looking now? So yeah, sorry about that. Doesn't seem to like Chrome for some reason. Very peculiar. So yeah, I'll email the site report through, but I'll just talk through it because that's really off-putting having that flickering. There's the images. I kind of have an image for every client, and then I've also got a spreadsheet as well, which is that thing. And this hasn't really got any plants on, because of the initial stages of the design. What you're doing is to kind of get the general idea about what plants are going to go where, but without talking about specific species. And then I've also got a Pinterest page as well, so just kind of put a couple of ideas on there for the witch's hut. And yep, so for the actual site report itself, let's talk about the overall site. So this is south. The garden's kind of northeast facing north. So it's sloping from the top left-hand corner and slopes down to the house. So the house is down here in the bottom right-hand corner. And I've done a very kind of sketch in CAD. Sometimes I'll do a sketch with a pencil or with pen, but this just felt so much easier to do in CAD itself. So the lines they're not really representative of specific plants and specific paths. It's more just the kind of general idea of different areas. So in case you're wondering why it looks a bit sketchy, it's because it is sketchy. And it's northeast facing, so sloping from the top left-hand corner and sloping down. And the house, the back of the house faces east, but the sun doesn't come over the hill until in the winter, until like quite late on in the day. And the kind of the idea for the garden, really the kind of key thing, is optimizing the use of the land around the house itself. So there's a couple of kind of really key decisions that need to be kind of taken like now, which will very much influence the design of the garden. So these are, first of all, the size of the parking area and the turning circle. And this is kind of, yeah, not what you normally think about when you're designing gardens, but it's really important that this gets sorted out so we know how much space we have for the other elements in the garden. So John the builder was working on it, and I had a really good conversation with him about it, and he was giving me dimensions like 9 meters in, a 7 meter width for the gate, and the flat area, and then 9 meters. But he was talking about a turning circle. So the turning circle of a car, that's about 20 meter diameter circle. If you can see that, that's 20 meters. So the actual, if you want to be able to drive in and then turn around in one swoop, that's the absolute. I think it's possibly larger than that circle. So the kind of question is, what for turning, is it going to be like a 3-point turn that you're going to do to come in and come out? And the other side of that really needs to be sorted out is how much space for parking. How many cars do you want parked in that area? So there's like the parking, the turning space, and then there's a number of cars that you want. And you need to sort that out because that has an effect on how big the whole area, the flat area is. Now for accessibility, we're also then talking about ramps coming from here. The next key point, it's like 5 points. The next key point is the external house doors and the circulation inside, because this is the main entrance. You can see here is the main entrance into the garden, and then from the house itself, the main exit and entrance at the moment is right the way back here by the road. So you've got to walk all the way along, you've got to go out of the house, wherever you are, all the way along out the corridor, and then out into the garden. So it's when you're getting the designs done, I know the designs aren't going to be done for the designs for the house aren't going to be done for a while, but it's really important to pick up on the access points from the house. So ideally what you want to have is an access point from the dining room. Now there's patio doors at the moment, but you don't want people walking in and out of the house right past people having dinner. That's really off-putting. Having a circulation space which is right next to people where they're seated. So it's how do you tackle with it? Do you possibly have it around the side of the house? I don't know, or making use of the front of the house exit, but that's a bit too far away. There is currently a door here, roughly around here. So that's one possibility, is to kind of extend the use of that. So you're not walking past people when they're dining. So that's the kind of key thing. The next side of that part of the same equation is what is the circulation inside the house and how is that going to work? So that needs really kind of careful thinking about by the architect. And related to that is the plan is to build up the house. It's only 1 story at the back, and the plan is to build up the house to another story. So you have the bedrooms at the back as well, and you need to know where the windows are going to be quite early on, because that could affect the garden as well, like the actual view of the garden, how you're using the garden. So for any job that I'm doing, you start with the house and then you work from the exit points in the house and also the views from the house, because that determines how you use the space outside and also what you see when you look out of the window. Yep. So that's another important consideration as well. So with the architect, get those entrances and exits sorted out, internal circulation space, and the kind of rough idea of the design of the first floor. Third one is the size and position of the swimming pool. Now this is going to be used for a hydrotherapy, but I've got no idea about swimming pools. I've never worked with them before. So how big is it? What's the orientation of it? How much space does it need around it? I've just put it here for now, but need to know that earlier on, because this affects all the other parts of the garden as well. So once we've got an idea of basically the boundary and the exits for these different areas, then we can work on to other stuff. But you need to get that done first. And then finally, the specification for the witch's hut is up here. There's a witch's hut. What is the specs for it? How big? What kind of rooms? I put a composting toilet up there. Water supply, or is rainwater harvesting okay? Electricity or solar panels okay? So how is it going to be used? There's all these kind of questions, and then around all of this is a question of budget as well, because this again determines how much work's done on the different stages, what materials you're using, and if you've got an idea of this at the beginning, that makes life an awful lot easier for all these other decisions, because you can actually get them to fit in to that overall budget, and then a budget for each of the constituent parts. Okay, so that's kind of not boring stuff, but that's the really, really important stuff. These are the initial decisions that need to be made. That's the really kind of really, really, really important to kind of get on with it. Okay, so that's out of the way. Now I want to talk about the kind of the garden itself. So we talked about parking, and for access, so I'm just going to go through the list. I've got a list of features on the report, and I just want to go through this list of features. So first of all, parking. How many parking spaces, and then for access, this is it starts to slope at the back here. There's going to be a ramp from the flat level parking area up into there. So again, ramps take up a lot of space relatively, and so that again they need to be carefully designed for their length and the angle that they're at. So this is why it's so important to sort out how big these things are. The next part is the hard standing walkway, and so this is the main parking entrance here, and when you go in, it's pretty level. So I was talking to the builder, and he's saying that's good, that's like a good level run, and that's a really useful space, kind of keeping that hard standing space, and it's kind of useful in terms of access, but also for other uses as well. So like kids playing on bicycles, learning to ride a bike, so you're not on the road, and that's quite a long distance. How big is it? I just wonder. Let's have a quick look. It is 25 meters, so that's kind of good long length. And the width of it, how do we, what kind of width are we talking about? And it's all kind of interesting. Like you kind of treat it as a super wide path, but which links up the different areas, and is next to some beds. And then we have the hard standing is the dining patio. Oh yeah, for the hard standing walkway, I'm really interested in using self-binding gravel, like a proper self-binding gravel, because it's low maintenance, and if it's foot and bike traffic, it's not a problem. Can't really use it for vehicles, but it's good. It's low maintenance, and it's kind of wildlife friendly, and there's like habitat you can kind of build into it as well. Dining patio, back of the house. Currently, you can see here where there's a patio at the moment. Extending that back again, knowing about sizes and widths of things. But the key point here is what kind of access do we have to the garden? Because if you are once you start extending, you start losing the space which you've got there for the steps, and then you've got to have more steps, and then we need to put rails in for accessibility. Is there a potential for putting a ramp in or not? I don't know if there's a space to do it, but it depends upon all the other elements in the puzzle as well. And then this area, I'm thinking it's an extension of the dining room, so it goes out, and then this is where you can actually, I think in the summer, I didn't check where the sun was rising, but that should be like a breakfast area as well, so that catches the sun from the east. And it's a herb garden, edible ornamentals. So if you've got the kitchen down here, you kind of want easy access to any kind of cooking herbs. So for example, we've got bay tree at the back we've got 2 bay trees in pots by the kitchen, and then we can nip out, grab a couple of leaves, and come back in again really quickly. And it's that kind of ease of use, then the garden will be used more readily. And yes, so that's good. There's a shed here which lovely. It's a nice shed, using that for storage space. And then the centred courtyard. This was decking, had a load of hard standing put on it for the decking. But I'm just thinking, the more I think about it, that is the sunniest spot in the whole garden. It's raised up above the house, and it's the sunniest spot in the garden. And make good use of that. So make use of that in terms of the herbs and the plants that you grow in the herbs. So it's like basically creating a herb garden, courtyard, scented garden. So it's like a scented courtyard. You go in, you're surrounded by scent, you're surrounded by by herbs, and you can then you can easily go down to the dining area. And I'm not sure about steps, but I put like steps in here just to kind of emphasize the point about access to the kitchen, so you can go out the kitchen into the herb garden, possibly. And I don't know what's underneath there, so this is all it's all hypothetical. And also using that space is a good place again for a summer house. Now, what summer house is actually really, really good for spring and autumn and times in winter as well, because it's a sunnier spot. And if you've got glazed windows, it'll heat up very, very quickly in the when the sun comes out. So you can actually use that space. So that's one thing. And then also having a pergola. This is about be the barbecue area as well. So if it's raining, you can open the doors in the summer house and you can have the barbecue, and then you can go into the summer house or cook in the kitchen, but still be outside. And then in the height of summer, you have a pergola, and then you'll be using that for shade. So a kind of way of thinking about plants as well is you can have deciduous plants which provide shade in the summer and then allow the sun to come through in the winter. So that's kind of useful if you have, I don't know, like a propagation greenhouse, for example, or a summer house where you want to kind of moderate that temperature. So that's kind of, that's a really, really interesting space. And I just love the way that could tie in with the dining room patio. You could actually get it working really nicely with the dining patio as well. So they flow into each other. And then you have the hard standing walkway, and that kind of goes around into the play area, which is like for the kids and the toys and the lawn. So there's a place where they can kick a football around, and so that's the kind of flat spot there. Then the kind of interesting thing, well, for me interesting. Should I go on to the forest garden entrance terraces? Yeah. So the forest garden is a forest garden entrance, and you can really, again, this is like how you tie this in with the main entrance. When you're coming in from the car, you see straight ahead. When you come up the ramp, you're going to the house. This is what you see. This is like the entrance to the forest garden. So again, it's something that could be very ornamental. It can be ornamental, but it can also be like a forest garden. So there's a whole range of different edible ornamental plants. I mean, I was talking to the gardener about it. What on earth was it? It was a crabapple, Chinese crabapple, Malus torment. I can't remember the name of it, but it's very ornamental, and it is edible as well. It has edible crab apples. There's a whole load of alliums. There's a whole load of onions that you can use. Favourite one at the moment is garlic chives, Allium tuberosum, I think. Beautiful, just really long-lasting flowers. I mean, they've been flowering at a client's garden for until October, November time this year. Just crazy, with a real kind of pollinator magnet as well. But these are really ornamental, quite showy plants, and this is the kind of thing that you want to build up and make it into like a big entrance into the forest gardens. It's like a bit of a statement, and a kind of focal point that there is something else up here as you're going into the garden, as you can see past the play area and then down into the dining room patio, or into the centred courtyard. Next part then is the wildlife duck pond. 2 ducks, and you want to keep it wild. I'm not sure about the specifications for this in terms of ducks. I've just done it as a circle, but it's obviously I'd use a more kind of organic shape than that. Ducks don't mind, but you can make it look far more. You can make it a bit more organic. What I would do is to clay lined. Kind of prefer using clay lined where possible. Should be easy to find clay in the area too, like local clay. And then using native plants as well, not exclusively the native plants, but there's some really, really interesting edible natives, bog and pond plants as well, marginals, which I can talk about later on. So that's wildlife duck pond. Going through past the swimming pool, need to know the size and the orientation of it and how that's all going to work. Any kind of supporting infrastructure. And then, what have I got here? Forest garden entrance, swimming pool, and the polytunnel. Now, what I think about the polytunnel is that you could, using this area for annual vegetables, because I was originally thinking about using the area right by the kitchen, but to be honest, that's that's you want to maximise that space for people's space, and then annual vegetables kind of a bit further away, but then it's far more a kind of good use of the space. What I was thinking about here was propagation. So for the garden as a whole, and I spoke about this previously, rather than trying to plant up everything all at the same time, you kind of focus on the house, build up the areas around the house first of all, put the kind of the windbreaks and the canopy layer in, and then you develop each area by area. So you kind of keep in the grass and to an extent the bracken and the bramble, and controlling it and mowing and keeping that down. But then if you want to put ground cover and shrubs in, you come in later, and then you do one section, and then you can do another section. But this requires an awful lot of plants, because you're planting at densities of about 3 to 5 plants per square metre, depending upon the species and depending upon the size of the plant. But that's one hell of a lot of plants. That's like thousands and thousands of plants, which costs a vast amount of money. But if you've got the time and the resources, it's worth propagating them yourself, because then you can, alongside annual vegetables, you can have a bed of green strawberries as a ground cover plant. So it's actually worthwhile doing that. So that's the kind of nursery aspect of it, the propagation nursery aspect of it. You can also do this for shrubs too. So there's an awful lot of fruiting shrubs, like all the currants and aronia and honeyberry and other ones, but which will propagate really easily from cuttings. And if you it's just, if you just buy a few different varieties, and you're in no great rush, you can then build up a massive, great orchard, soft fruit variety really, really quickly. So, and then the other side of that is the possibility of supplying and supporting local school gardens. So So I'm doing some work at the moment for my local primary school, and it's not actually that big a space. It's not a massive issue, but getting plants in and getting the right kind of plants in, if you're growing them anyway, then it's a way of extending out into the community and helping other people growing plants too, because you're growing them, and you grow an extra 30 plants. It's relatively easy for you to do that if you're doing it anyway. So that's just like an idea. And then on to the forest garden itself. Now the forest garden it's really, really interesting. The field at the moment, it's about 2 acre site, and it's terraced. It goes up to about 2/3, I think, the terraces, and they're kind of interesting. I like them. Keep the basic structure and extend that structure up. So for access for the top left hand corner, you add more terraces, and they're quite wide, but they're quite gradual and go across the width of the garden. But that's kind of what I recommend doing: extending the terraces and then planting trees in between the gaps. So what you've got a flat bit, relatively steep bit, flat bit, but the access is actually really, really good. And I've done this on another a garden in Carmarthenshire just the other day. I just did a whole load of planting, and it really, really works. It's a steep garden, but because the paths are flat, you've got the access to the trees. So that's kind of the overall approach that I would recommend doing. Sorry for the doorbell. And also you'd supplement the terraces with switchback paths, like crisscross paths, which would be slightly steeper but a quicker way of getting to a point. So rather than going all the way to one side of the field, all the way back again, you can, if you are able and you want to, you're fit enough, you can go up the kind of the path which goes up. So that's a kind of through the centre of it and across different parts of it. So that's the terraces. And then for the witch's hut, I love this. I absolutely love it. That's a beautiful spot right at the top of the garden, and it's got a view of the sea, and it's got a view of the river and a view of the town, and it's just incredible place, and really make the most of that. So surround that area off, fence that area off, and then treat it as its own garden. It's like the witch's garden. So with herbs, you could just you could really go to town with this. A whole lot of different ideas. And then I'd use something like a post and rail fencing or equivalent. So it's round wood, local round wood. Like I work with a guy who uses a lot of larch, and there's someone else I know who uses a lot of oak. and you have this beautiful fencing that surrounds the area, and then kind of cultivate in that internal part. And then for the part, there's a gate down here which is 50 meters down. Work out how many cars you want there, like I don't know, however many cars. Flatten the area, parkour down, and then that's got the turning area, and then put a path in from there up to the witch's path, so that if you are using, anyone's visiting and they're in the witch's hut, that's easy for them to get to. And you can also walk up there using the switchback paths. And then in terms of areas, I really love, so the softer fruit you keep closer to the house, so it's easy if you are into netting, like for cherries. If you want cherries, then you really need to kind of recommend growing smaller trees, and then you can net the trees to keep the birds out. And the same for soft fruit as well, or you can have a soft fruit cage. You keep those closer to the house, and then the harder fruit, the apples and the Asian pears, and the the Devon sorb apple, and the whole range of some very, very kind of interesting, exciting plants. You keep them, you can have them further away from the house. So the kind of orchard is the kind of softer fruit, and the soft fruit and the softer like the tree fruit. And then, but you kind of, it's not like a defined line. You can extend that out. There's not like a hard line around it, but just to give you that idea of the orchard area is kind of closer to the house. And because this is kind of interesting spot here, because this is north facing, this is where you kind of you've got to be a bit, considerate of your neighbours as well. There's a massive, great big drop down here, but you could put like taller trees along here. And I've just put sweet chestnut and apple in on the plan. I'm just using them for size. I'm not using them for, this is what's going to go where. So that's just like an indication of the kind of type of trees that you could put in. And then the woodland garden, there's like 7 hazels up the top, and they're just like it's like a lovely little spot, and I kind of build upon that, like build in a woodland garden, so like more like native species, and then like less productive, quote unquote, but that would be like quite a beautiful space. Again, the positioning's not all there. And then finally there's lots of like little nooks and crannies around, so it's a lovely space to play with. But I would kind of recommend, if you're kind of starting out a forest garden, this is for anybody with like a bit of land and if you want to create a forest garden, is growing a willow or another fast growing like cornus, like dogwood, like native dogwood, blood twig dogwood. Growing these for biomass, and by biomass, really I'm talking about hedge. I'm talking about dead hedges. It's southwest facing, northeast facing, but you get a heck of a lot of wind coming in from that way. So you want to plant windbreak hedges. But before they get established, you want to have dead hedges. But dead hedges, the thing about dead hedges is they take up a vast amount of material. Now, you can get material from other parts of the site, because I know the site extends. But if it's very good to be able to grow the willow, and then you can harvest it. It'll grow enough in a year. You harvest it, top up the dead hedges, keep them ticking over. And I do like putting dead hedges in front of the young trees that I've got, particularly on such an exposed site. I would do that. I'd create dead hedges around each kind of specimen tree. I put a dead hedge where the prevailing wind is, and that really, really helps it get established. Plus dead hedges, in other spots as well. Kind of more general protection across the garden as a whole. Okay, so that's that. So that's a kind of quite a detailed and deep dive into the plans that I've done. And hope that is good. That's half an hour. Crikey Moses. So I hope that's good. Any questions, client, do please email me. Any questions, anyone else who's watching, feel free to email me as well. There we go. Thank you very much for watching, and see you again soon. Cheers then. Bye.